Hey guys, so today we're talking about nutrition and how within Sports Rehab Ireland we set up nutrition for each and every one of our clients. So first thing is that nutrition is individual. It depends on the person, their individual tastes, their likes, what they enjoy eating, and also what they eat interacts with them, how much energy it gives them, how well it goes through the system, for want of a better way of putting that, and how you get benefit from it. So with that being said, there isn't one diet that works for everybody. It just doesn't exist. And therefore, for that reason, we tend to set up diets with the individual rather than just prescribing eat this, eat this, eat this, eat this meal at this time and this meal at that time. It makes it much easier to get a result for you, and it makes it much easier for you to adhere to a nutrition plan rather than a diet that is scripted and doesn't really have an awful lot of thought for you or what you like to eat, as a result of which you're probably going to stop doing it fairly quickly, just simply because it will start to annoy you. It has to be something that you can continue to do and that you can enjoy doing long term as well as in the short term. Otherwise, what's the point of starting it in the first place? Because at the end of the day, turning around and doing a diet for 4 weeks or 8 weeks, however long it is, with the sole goal of thinking, God, I can't wait till this is over, just so I can start eating normally again, isn't going to help. Because those nutrition habits that you had before are how you got to the point in the first place where you wanted to lose weight. So going back to doing those same things after the diet ends is only going to make you regain the weight. It has to be something that you can continue. With that being said, we're going to talk a little bit about macros. Now, this is something that's banded about a good bit. Macro. What is a macro? There are 3 main macros, and a macro is short for macronutrient. So they're the main areas that we get energy from. So the 3 main macros are protein, fats, and carbs. Okay? There is a 4th macro, and that's alcohol. But we tend not to have that too much. We want to try and limit the amount of that on a daily basis, just for general health benefits as well as weight loss. But the main 3 that we're going to talk about are proteins, fats, and carbs. So protein. Protein is the first and foremost for everything. It's really important for us that we do get adequate protein in our diet. It makes up everything about us. Our bones, our muscle, our lungs, our organs, everything it is involved in. So without that, we can't actually survive. Hence the reason why it's somewhat important. It also has a really important role to play in a diet because it actually helps us to feel fuller for longer. Protein takes a longer amount of time to be able to process through our digestive tract, and as a result, when we eat high amounts of it, it makes us feel fuller. So it's a great benefit that if you are trying to diet, if you are trying to lose weight, that you do eat high amounts of protein, because it's going to stop you from feeling hungry, which is the main thing that we want to try and avoid. When we're dieting, we want to try and feel as full as possible so we're not constantly feeling like we're looking for food, but we also want to be able to be in a position where we don't feel hungry. That it's not a pleasant feeling hungry, so we want to try and avoid that as best as possible and as much as possible. For every gram of protein that we take, there are 4 calories per that gram. So this is where calories comes into it, but we'll go into that in more detail later. The other benefit from protein is if we're training hard, it also allows us to recover. So as I mentioned before, protein comes into the fundamental building blocks of muscle and bone. With training, what we'll see is a turnover in both the amount of bone that we have and the amount of muscle that we have. Without having adequate protein in our diet, we tend to find that we will see an inadequate replenishment of those tissues, so bone and muscle. Bone, however, is something that you'll see a big impact on in later life and in later health. So for example, with a higher bone turnover and a reduced protein intake, you will be more susceptible to issues like osteoporosis in later life, particularly in women. So it's really important that protein plays an adequate part in our diet to help us to replenish. Equally, when it comes back to putting both of those together, of bone and muscle, in later life, the less muscle that you have, the weaker that you'll be, and as a result of which, the less mobile that you're going to be. So in terms of thinking, when you're old, more chance of being in a home. We want to try and avoid that. It's a long way off, but it is still something that we can look at for longevity and overall health, which at the end of the day, no matter what our training reasons are, whether it's going to be weight loss, get bigger, look jacked, you still want to have a bit of an eye to the future and what your long-term health is going to be. I don't care how big I am, I don't want to be walking around with a Zimmer frame when I'm about 60. So what's a good rule of thumb to be looking at in terms of how much protein you should be eating? Is an adequate protein amount is about 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. Food sources that are good in protein, most dairy, so the likes of your cheese and milk. Eggs, again, are a fantastic source of protein. Lean meat, such as chicken, turkey, really good sources of protein. Beef and red meat are still brilliant sources of protein. It's just important to understand and remember that these are also sources of meat that have higher amounts of fat in them. So yes, they have a place in the diet, and yes, they have a place in getting adequate protein in our diets. However, it wouldn't be something that you'd want to be consuming on a daily basis in huge quantities. The next macronutrient that we're talking about is fat. Fat is slightly different than protein in many ways, but in the main way that it's going to impact upon our diet is the amount of calories that we get per gram of fat. So with fat, unlike protein, we've 9 calories per gram. It's the highest calorie dense macronutrient that we would eat on a daily basis. So it's important how much we take in of it. We don't want to have none of it, as it's hugely important in our ability to function, for our cells to function, and to be able to regulate our hunger. However, too much of it swings the other way. So the first 2 things that we do when we're looking at our nutrition is working out first our protein, second our fat content. They're both hugely important and both hugely beneficial to have in our diet. The third thing that we work out is our carbohydrate intake, and that works out the remainder of our calories. So once we've got our protein and our fat worked out, we can then take the remainder of what we have left to eat and put that into our carbohydrate. Now, carbohydrates become a kind of a villain. It's become the new villain of what fat was, and I'm fairly convinced at some point in the future protein is going to be the same thing. Don't eat anything at all other than cardboard. So it's being realistic. Carbohydrate has a place in everything that we do. It is a marvelous thing. Not only does it taste great, but it also is the prime provider of our energy. So taking out carbohydrate from the diet altogether tends to have a impact upon how well we feel, our energy levels, how sluggish we feel, how much of a bastard we can be around. I know that from personal experience, from trying low carbohydrate diets. I'm not a nice person to be around. I just get grouchy. It's as simple as that. And an awful lot of people have that same problem, where taking out carbohydrate just drops energy levels, makes you feel sluggish, you just become irritable. And it's just the smallest things. So it's really important that we still keep it in the diet in order for us to feel human, as well as being able to enjoy what we're doing. Taking it out of the diet altogether isn't the most fun thing in the world. Okay, so we've talked about our 3 macronutrients: protein, fat, carbs. We've talked about how we put these together. So first of all, we work out our protein intake, which we're aiming for about 2 grams per kilogram. Next thing we're looking at is our fat. So that can be from anything from 0.5 grams per kilogram to 1 gram per kilogram. It depends. Again, at the beginning of the video, I mentioned that it's really important about how this relates to you, how you feel. So an individual conversation about how you feel with having certain things in the diet, it leaves us a little bit of room to play with, and that's where we aim for 0.5 to 1 gram per kilogram. And we've talked about how the rest of the calories then are made up from carbohydrate. So how does this actually come to be part of a diet and part of a nutrition plan for you? First thing that we do is we work out your weight. From there, we look at your activity levels and what you want to do, whether or not you want to lose weight or whether or not you want to be able to add more mass. If it's a case that we're looking to lose weight, we take down your energy levels by maybe 10%. The important thing about calories is that it's calories in, calories out. In order to create a weight loss program that works, we have to eat less than what we actually expend. The difficulty with this is it's not a static equation. The goal is always moving. Your weight is always moving and your energy levels are always adapting. What happens one day will not happen the next. So it's always a changing equation. And therefore, this is where people get kind of bogged down in finding that if you just eat less, 1 week might work, 2 weeks might work, week 3 doesn't work at all. What's going on wrong? So it's always about a case that it has to be moved, it has to be adapted and delivered to you, that it meets where you are at any given time. And that's why week by week we review your nutrition. So we set your calories, we then deduct either 10% or add 10% depending on your goals. We then turn around and discuss with you each week how it's working, where your energy levels are, how you've performed in the gym, how you've performed in work, how you performed on the scales, whether or not they've gone down, your feedback, how you feel in general, whether you feel full, satisfied, constantly hungry, your measurements as well. So also how you measure those measurements that we take of the body circumferences. Are they going down? Are they going up? That's how we plan how we continue on with that nutrition and how we plan your diet for you going forward. For ladies, it is very different, however. So your weight is going to hugely fluctuate depending on where you are in your cycle. So looking at a weight change for you isn't necessarily the best way of solely tracking any progress that you're making. So what we tend to do is to weigh you once a week and then compare that to the following week of the next month. So for example, we take your week one weight of say January and compare it to your week one weight in February, rather than comparing week 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, because that might go up, it might go down. There's no way for us to be able to track that accurately depending on your cycle, and therefore what we do is to take 1 month at a time and compare the weeks to one another. That way it gives us a more accurate understanding of, are you going down in weight, are you going up in weight, because more often than not your cycle is going to track the same sort of weight progressions month to month. How does all of this work, and how does this become part of what you do on a daily basis? What we're aiming for is to eat whole foods. So simply something you can identify that piece of food on your plate as being part of an animal or being part of a plant. We don't want it to be processed. We want to be able to identify it and easily identifiable. That's the first and foremost. So the main part of our meals should be like that. Say 80% of them. After that, we've got 10 and 10. Makes 100. See? Clever. So the other 10%, after that first 80, we're looking for slightly questionable foods. Foods you wouldn't necessarily eat on a day-to-day basis that would fit into the term of healthy foods, but you could have every now and again. That's something that we want to be able to include in our diet because it's fun, it's natural, and it's normal. Food isn't just about food. It's not about just getting food in and going off and doing whatever we want to do. There's a hugely social element to food. So if you turn around and say, I'm just eating whole foods, you become a real bore to be around, to be perfectly honest. And it limits your amount of social opportunities to go out and meet your friends and family and have fun and sit around a dinner table. So we want to be able to have a bit of flexibility in it. And that's where those slightly questionable foods come into it. The other 10% that makes up the full 100 is junk food. Food that you would consider, no, I would never eat that on a diet. Yes, you do. It's important. It means it doesn't have the same laborious nature all the time, and it allows you to be able to continue to get progress and continue to get results as you go forward, rather than just being sitting and doing, I'm doing a 6-week diet where I'm eating nothing but chicken and vegetables. That's great. You will probably lose weight because it's boring as hell and there isn't a huge amount of calories in it at all. However, long term, it's not going to be something that you're going to want to adhere to or be able to adhere to. So it's important that we have some sort of variety and variation in that for you that allows you to be able to continue being able to get weight loss as well as being able to enjoy yourself and not go stir crazy. So I hope that's helped with how we in Sports Rehab Ireland go about creating a nutrition plan for you and how we set that up to get results for you. If there's any questions, as always, drop me an email and let me know what you think. Thanks very much. Bye.